Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes, and we begin tonight with a question. Just how much money has secretly flowed from right-wing donors and interests into the household of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas? And the reason we have to ask is the stunning series of revelations, one after another, after another, after another, that we have seen in just the last few weeks. The latest came just last night when we learned that the conservative activist Leonard Leo was quietly directing money towards an organization run by Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny. Now, we've covered Leonard Leo on the show before. He is, to my mind, the single most influential private citizen in the country when it comes to America's courts. No one is even a close second. And Leo is at the center of a sprawling but largely hidden political machine, which is single-mindedly focused on appointing conservative justices to the courts and making sure they stay committed to the conservative project once they are there. Now, here's the latest reporting on him from the Washington Post, citing documents that have not been reviewed by NBC News. Over a decade ago, Leonard Leo funneled as much as $100,000 to Liberty Consulting, a firm run by Ginny Thomas, from which she takes a salary. The payments were facilitated by none other than Republican pollster and future Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway. According to the documents reviewed by the Post, back in January 2012, quote, Leo instructed Conway to bill a nonprofit group he advises and then use that money to pay Virginia Ginny Thomas. Here's how the Post says he did it. Leo, quote, told Conway he wanted her to give Ginny Thomas another $25,000, the documents show. Conway's firm, the polling company, sent a nonprofit associated with Leo that $25,000 bill that day. Per Leo's instructions, Conway's firm listed the purpose as supplement for Constitution polling and opinion consulting. Now, in total, the Post reports, quote, Conway's firm paid Thomas's firm $80,000 between June 2011 and June 2012. It's a good chunk of change. It expected to pay $20,000 more before the end of 2012. We're talking $100,000 in a calendar year. The documents reviewed by the Post do not indicate the precise nature of any work Thomas did. Okay. So it sounds like Leonard Leo and Kellyanne Conway directed $100,000 to a group run by Ginny Thomas without any clear expectation of work in exchange for those funds, at least as far as the Post reporting can tell. Now, in the effort to be fair here, there's nothing inherently wrong with one conservative organization sending money to another conservative organization or billing them for services. And that's effectively the defense Kellyanne Conway herself offered earlier today. But here's the thing. I don't think it normally goes down like this when the transaction's on the up and up. Give Ginny Thomas another $25,000 does not sound like you're paying someone for services rendered, right? There's not like, oh, we're going to send an invoice over because we did this work, and then you process the invoice and then you pay them. No, it's throw another $25,000 that way. And it gets worse from there because that nonprofit group that advised by Leonard Leo, the one that Conway took the money from to pay Ginny Thomas's organization, right? That's where the money came from. That group had business before the Supreme Court. In 2012, that group, the Judicial Education Project, filed an amicus brief in the infamous Shelby County case, which resulted in Clarence Thomas siding with the other conservatives to gut the Voting Rights Act. That is, of course, not surprisingly, the exact outcome the Judicial Education Project was hoping for. Now, of course, conservatives will say, no corruption here. That verdict ideologically aligns with Thomas's judicial philosophy. And that's true. Sure. There's no evidence he was directly influenced by the amicus brief or the fact that his household was getting $100,000 from Leonard Leo through some back channel. But then there's also the fact, at least as far as the Washington Post can tell, Leonard Leo has no official ties to the Judicial Education Project. Right? Remember, this is like this weird nonprofit that he's directing the money to come out of. He's not listed on its tax filings or its incorporation records. He advises the group, which is founded and run by his close allies. But like, how exactly is Leonard Leo, who has no like legal or official connection to this entity, in a position to just funnel tens of thousands of dollars from this group to anyone? It sounds like give Ginny Thomas another $25,000. He's just like drawing from a bank account, but it's not his in a legal sense. And he sure doesn't sound like an advisor when he directs that money to be given. Now, again, this is a lot, and it's a lot on purpose because Leonard Leo has structured this all in a fashion to be as opaque as possible. But the long and the short of it is that a very influential conservative activist, right, Leonard Leo, the most influential, was quietly directing money to a consulting firm run by the wife of a sitting Supreme Court justice. And Leonard Leo, to say that he has business before the court is to be like, I have business before cable news. It's what he does, okay? That's it. That's all he cares about is what the court does. Okay, but here's the kicker. Because it really sounds like Leonard Leo really didn't want anyone to know about it. In that initial request to Conray, right, where he's telling her to give Ginny Thomas the money, to give her the $25,000, he added a very special instruction, quote, no mention of Ginny, of course. Which to me is almost comically incriminating and gives the entire game away. No mention of Ginny, of course, because it would sure look bad if Leonard Leo was giving money to a group run by the wife of a sitting justice for vague, undefined purposes. In a statement to the Post, Leo said, quote, knowing how disrespectful, malicious, and gossipy people can be, I have always tried to protect the privacy of Justice Thomas and Ginny. As for the Thomases, they did not respond to a request for comment from NBC News or Washington Post. In fact, they haven't given any interviews since any of this came out. They've issued like one on the record statement. This is truly just the beginning when it comes to Justice Clarence Thomas. It comes on the heels of reporting about a whole bunch of other undisclosed financial benefit that Thomas and his family got from the conservative billionaire Harlan Crow, who paid tuition for a child who Thomas raised as a son, who bought Thomas's mother's house where she lives rent-free, and he fixed it up and took Thomas and his wife on luxurious vacations on his yacht and private jet worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you have a friend like that? I sure as heck don't. He even commissioned this truly spectacular painting of the two of them, which I will never, ever tire of showing you. And the reason we know all this is not from financial disclosure forms or revelations from Thomas himself. No, we know this because of the dogged work of reporters digging into the financial entanglements surrounding one of the most powerful men in the country, despite the obvious attempts of people like Leonard Leo, in his own admission, in black and white and subsequently confirmed, to hide the truth of that money flow. So again, the question is, who exactly is putting money in the pockets of our judges? Very reasonable question for any citizen of a democratic republic to ask. And right now, I am not sure we know the full answer. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has been a leading voice in the Judiciary Committee pushing for Supreme Court accountability, and he joins me now. Do you think the desire to spare Ginny Thomas from the gossipy slings and arrows of people such as myself is sufficient explanation for hiding a flow of money into the pockets of the Thomas household?
No, and it actually has nothing to do with that at all. Leonard Leo operates a very, very opaque flotilla of phony front groups through which money can be shuffled around and shunted around to protect and hide the billionaires who fund him behind this whole phony flotilla. This judicial education project that we've been talking about, that's actually not even a real organization. It doesn't exist. It is the registered, quote, fictitious name of another group called the 85 Fund, which is Leonard Leo's pet project that is connected to him through his CRC Advisors Group, which is where he extracts his money out of this array of billionaire-funded front groups.
It exists as, I think there's a post office at a UPS store, a post office box at a UPS store, I believe, is the actual headquarters of this organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's that bad.
Okay, now I'm going to present to you two differing views on this and what should be done about what seems to be manifest, if not corruption, at the very least insufficient disclosure and ethics regime. The very least, right? Your colleague, Senator John Thune, says the following. The Supreme Court writes its own rules, and if there's any policing of those rules to be done, I think it ought to be done by them. That's the number 2 Senate Republican telling reporters. Dick Durbin, your colleague on the Judiciary Committee, has given a somewhat softer version of that, saying that he urges John Roberts to take this seriously. John Roberts has to police this. Do you think the notion that Roberts and the Chief Justice and the court should police itself over this is sufficient?
No. First, we have referred the matter to the Chief Justice for investigation. He's in turn referred it to the Judicial Conference. They in turn have referred it to their Financial Disclosure Committee. we are watching very closely and have expanded the ask to the Financial Disclosure Committee to get a real result out of this. Because the last time they did this, 11 years ago, with Harlan Crow yacht and jet gifts to Clarence Thomas, there's no public record of any determination ever having been reached by the Financial Disclosure Committee. It came to no apparent conclusion. So this has to come to a conclusion this time, and we're going to be watching it very closely. The second thing is that all the mischief with Leo and these phony front groups, all of that is potentially in violation of the tax code. Some of it is conceivably even fraud. There could be potentially criminal aspects to this, particularly if there was no work performed for that $25,000. And all of that can be properly investigated without getting into the internal operations of the court and Clarence Thomas. So we proceed on two fronts: forcing the court to do a proper investigation in every way that we can, and then doing the investigative work that the executive and legislative branch can do to look into this surrounding set of mischief makers near Clarence Thomas.
I mean, I don't know. You know, it's possible J.D. Thomas did phenomenal work, and Leonard Leo had a meeting with her where she showed that work, and he's like, wow, that's great. We got to give her another $25,000 for that fantastic work. I will say, as someone whose first reporting life was in Chicago, the no-show job is it's a real, like, kind of like canonical aspect of corruption. Like, it's part of, it's not, this is not some, invented, newfangled innovation in the world of corruption, should it turn out to be that. Now, I'm going to read you another reaction. This comes from
this
the Democratic...
combines the no-show job with the no there fake corporation. It's a beautiful pairing.
Yes, it's not clear how much work is being done here. Now, this is Jamal Bowman, a Democratic colleague of yours in the House, not the Senate. And he says, mega donors bankrolling a justice's entire life is beyond unethical. Thomas resign or be impeached. Do you agree with that?
Well, let's be practical. We're trying to do what we can here. There is literally zero chance that the Republican-controlled House is going to impeach Clarence Thomas. And there's literally zero chance that a Senate with the number of Republicans we have in it would ever vote to convict him. So whether he should be or shouldn't be, I'm working this issue in the realm of the possible. And what's possible is to really push on this. You know, you didn't have to impeach Abe Fortas. He resigned under pressure from the court. If this gets much worse, there's going to be intolerable pressure from regular federal judges on the Supreme Court and within the Supreme Court on Clarence Thomas to straighten this whole mess out. This was a straight gift to Clarence Thomas, who would otherwise have had to pay the private school tuition of the child that he was raising as his son. And the fact that it wasn't disclosed is just incomprehensible.
I will note that Alan Weisselberg, the CFO of the Trump org, pled to and did some time for failing to report Donald Trump's payment of his grandchildren's private school tuition as income on his taxes. That's one of the things that he had to go to prison for. So that's a thing. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden is after the taxes, and I'm helping him on that.
Yeah, I also think we don't really know the full story here, so I look forward to getting it all out into the sunlight. Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you. More to come.